What's up gardeners, Devin is here, and in this video I'm going to show you guys how to transplant your small tomato plants into larger containers or right into the ground. Whether you started them from seeds and they have created a wonderful nice small plant and they're ready to be transplanted, or if you're like me and you're starting from a pre-started baby tomato plant like this, stay tuned as I give you some tips and tricks on how to get them best started. Now if you are going to be growing your tomatoes in containers like I am, you always want to opt for something quite large. What I have here is a 16-inch pot, and that's pretty much the smallest size container that you want to use. I never like to grow tomatoes together because they are such vigorous plants, their roots will compete with one another, so I always give my tomatoes plenty of space on their own so that they have all the soil, all the nutrients, and all the available moisture possible. It's very, very important when growing your tomatoes. Now, the next thing that you'll note is that growing tomatoes is a little bit different when you're transplanting than from other plants. Typically, when we're growing anything and we're ready to pot it up into the next size, we will almost always plant it at the same depth that it has already been planted at. But transplanting tomatoes is a little bit different. As you can see, this stem is already producing tons of roots right along the stem. What I do is I will always plant mine around 4 to 6 inches even deeper. And so that is going to allow all of these baby roots that are just starting to continue to grow, as well as more roots forming along the stem. And why that's so important, it's going to create a much sturdier foundation for your tomato plant to grow upwards, especially while growing some big, fat, juicy tomatoes. And that's what we love. So once you've picked out a spot in your garden that gets at least 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, or if you're doing it in a container like I am, we always want to start with as much fresh soil as possible. So for you out in the garden, adding a nice hefty pile of compost or fresh bagged soil to those areas is very important. Another reason why I like to grow in containers is because I can easily start with fresh new soil every single year. You can see it's nice and dark and rich and full of nutrients, exactly as we want. So now we're just going to simply dig a nice little hole right in the middle of our container or in the ground. And I'm going to plant it, maybe even a little bit deeper. There you go. Now, try to get it as upright as possible, and then fill it back in. Give it a nice little pat, just like that. Of course, after that, we want to give it a nice deep watering. And then for most of us, we want to think about staking them up. Now I'm going to be growing, these are a patio beefsteak tomatoes, so they are going to produce some really nice large beefsteak tomatoes, so you definitely want to give them something to provide a little bit of extra support. I like to use these stakes that are kind of, you can take them apart, add them together, make them as tall as you want. And I'll put a link for these in the description below in case you want to add these to your garden. You can reuse them from year to year, which is also what I love. Now, when you want to stake them, I like to do 4 right around the edges, and you want to stick your stakes down as far as possible till it touches the bottom of your pot if you are growing them in containers. And then with my stakes, I have these little guys that you can move them up and down as you need to as your plant gets bigger and bigger, which I find to be really helpful. And all right, that looks pretty darn good. Now it's ready to be taken outside in an area that gets at least 6 to 8 hours of nice direct sunlight. We're gonna be making sure that these never dry out. And in about a week, I'll give it its first application of fertilizer once the roots have had a chance to really kind of get settled. And that's about it. For me, I'm actually going to be growing these in my little portable greenhouse down in my basement. And so if that sounds like an interesting video that you'd like to see how it turns out, stay tuned as I will be posting that with updates along the way. But anyways, for now, this looks like a great start. Hopefully, tomatoes will be right around the corner. Anyways, thank you guys for joining me here on Plant Vibrations. I'll catch you soon. Ciao.